It just don't make sense to me. Like, I do not get it.
Well, let my life together. And ask her to do some work.
All right.
And hit me up later.
Okay.
All right. No.
Want to try to find anybody who knows anything about what may have happened on the 23rd. Is that correct?
It's to help locate witnesses.
Right. And witnesses doesn't necessarily mean a person who saw the actual shooting. A witness could be anybody with knowledge that's relevant to your investigation.
That's correct.
Okay. Witnesses to the potential relationship between the two men involved in the conflict.
Correct.
Witnesses that might understand who Mr. Arbrey is or what he's doing in the neighborhood.
Correct.
Okay. Witnesses that might know Travis McMichael.
Correct.
Witnesses that may know about the history of break-ins or burglaries or thefts in the neighborhood.
Correct.
Okay, so you went knocking on doors with another investigator.
I did.
That was investigator who?
Heather Savage.
Investigator Savage. So the two of you, if my records are correct, on Burford, you went to 300, I'm going to list them out, okay? 300, 302, 305, 310, 314, 316, 318, and 322. Does that sound right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so just in looking at our map again, essentially, you started here at the beginning of Burford, and you went all the way up the street looking for information.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody that didn't answer the door, you left a card, and perhaps you would get a phone call back.
Correct.
And then whoever identified themselves as someone with knowledge, you would then pass that person's name over to another investigator who would follow up.
We would, Investigator Lowry, who's the case agent, would have.
Lowry, we're going to call him the head case agent, is that
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
That's where everything comes up to him and he makes the calls about what to do.
That's correct.
All right. Only one of those in every case, is that fair?
About 2 if possible.
2 if possible,
Yes.
okay. And Investigator Marcy was another investigator that took a lot of responsibility in this case as well.
I'm not aware.
Not aware. Okay. Now, you also went up Holmes, the street where the shooting took place, and you went to 404, 405, 416, 418, and 419. Is that right?
That's correct.
So if we're looking at Holmes here, this is our street here on Holmes, you went pretty much all the way up and down Holmes looking for information.
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, you also were looking at residents on Satilla, and this would carry from 221, 235, 239, and then 225 through 229. So essentially, again, you're coming in this area here looking for anybody that knows anything.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Now, by the time that you arrived on the scene, Travis McMichael was not there any longer, right?
Not that I'll say no, but I wasn't paying attention to who was involved.
Okay,
So-
you were not asked to photograph him on the scene,
No.
or to talk with him on the scene,
No.
or to take fingerprints from him on the scene.
No.
Okay, and then I think later that day, you actually saw him back at headquarters.
Who?
Travis McMichael.
Yes.
Yeah, you had a very brief interaction with him there, and I believe you noticed that he was in a distraught state.
Yes.
And I think you even asked him, "Are you okay?" And he said no.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the next day, you went back to the neighborhood, and this was, we were talking about doing some of this neighborhood canvas.
Correct.
Is that right? And as you were walking through the neighborhood and coming up Satilla, you came across Mr. McMichael, Travis McMichael.
Correct.
Now, he lives, in terms of your canvas, he lives right here at 230. Is
Correct.
that correct? So 230 is in the heart of the houses that you're knocking on the doors, right?
Correct.
Okay. And again, when you saw Mr. McMichael that day, he was outside in his yard.
Correct.
Again, he was distraught.
Correct.
He was upset, right?
Correct.
Trying to figure it all out.
Correct.
That's what he said to you. I'm just trying to figure this all out.
Correct.
Give me 1 second, please.
We were making sure, I just want to make sure. The two of you that are in the gallery, the large board, I saw there was some, you saw it.
Talking about
Yep,
that.
they saw it.
You see it, okay?
Yeah, it's sure.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you.
No question.
Mr. Goff.
A few.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name's Kevin Goff. I represent Mr. Bryan, and I just have a few more questions for you, if that's
No
okay. I think you indicated you did a canvass of the neighborhood,
Correct.
and one of the reasons you did that was to locate surveillance videos, if there were any, that might have captured this incident.
Correct.
All right. Did you miss Roddy Bryan's house?
I don't know where he lives.
Okay. But your practice was to leave business cards?
Correct.
All right. Did you ever recover any surveillance videos from Mr. Bryan?
There were a few residents that had them that were not able to obtain them, which we sent another investigator to locate or to obtain those videos if possible.
So how did the Glenn County Police Department recover the night owl videos?
I'm not sure. That
Did you
was-
recover the night owl videos?
No.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
Investigator Ramos, when you were out on scene, we saw in one of those pictures a truck driving away,
Correct.
okay? Were you aware that there was a second truck on scene earlier that day?
No.
About how long after the incident did you arrive on scene, do you know, roughly?
Maybe about an hour. I'm not sure what time the call came out. I arrived around 2:15. I want to say I estimated about an hour.
So with those trucks containing any sort of evidence, inside or outside, you didn't have a chance to document or collect any of that on scene that day?
Objection, Your Honor, that's leading.
Did you have an opportunity?
That's sustained. Rephrase it, please.
Did you have an opportunity to collect any evidence or photograph anything from the trucks that day?
No.
Just 1 second.
Investigator Ramos, when you sent that box or when you put the information or evidence collected from the shotgun and the ballistics, the 4 unfired and the 1 fired shot, you put that into the box and sealed it up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Judge, for the record, when we had said what was inside the box, it was test fires and the shotgun. Ballistics were done later on, and those would be tendered later. The 4 unfired and one fired will be tendered later.
Let's clarify.
Object to testifying right now.
Yeah, let's, off the record. Oh, I'm sorry, we can go ahead and address that.
You put those inside the box and sent them off, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Can I clarify
Sure.
something? So when we packaged it, it got turned over to the GBI. So I can't say that I sent them off. I don't know what happened after the custody was turned over to the GBI.
Okay.
No further questions, Joe.
Good thing on that limited issue from the defense.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
No, Your Honor.
There you are.
All right. Thank you. You can step down.
Judge, we're going to reserve the right to recall her. She knows that. You just let all the
Okay.
witnesses know that.
Yeah, let's, so you are subject to recall,
Correct.
and you are free to go today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay ready with this next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state calls Ricky Minshew. Ricky Minshew.
Watch behind you. If you raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do.
Where? This one. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, go ahead and introduce yourself to the jurors. Tell them your name and spell it for the court reporter, please.
My name is Ricky Minshew, R-I-C-K-Y, M-I-N-S-H-E-W.
Okay. And how are you currently employed?
I work in meal production.
You work in what now?
Meal production.
Okay. I want to turn your attention to February 23rd of 2020, okay? How were you employed at that time?
I was a patrol unit at Glenn County Police Department.
Okay. And at that time, how long had you been with Glenn County PD?
I was there for, at that date, approximately 7 months.
Okay.
There was about a 4-year gap, and I previously worked for Glenn County PD for a couple of years back in 2013.
Okay. So when did you first start in law enforcement?
2012.
2012. And which agency was that with?
It was for the city of Brunswick.
Okay, City of Brunswick. So Brunswick PD?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How long were you with Brunswick PD?
For approximately 1 year.
Okay. After that 1 year, where did you go?
I went to Glenn County Police Department, and I was there for about 2 years.
2 years. Okay. And what did you do there during that 2 years?
I worked in the patrol division.
Okay. After those 2 years, where did you go?
After those 2 years, I went into retail management.
Okay.
I was there for about 4 years, and then came back to Glenn County Police Department, where I was there for about 7 months before this date.
Before this date?
Correct.
Okay. So during the 7 months you were there at Glenn County PD before February 23rd, what were your duties, just briefly?
All right, I was on patrol division, and my duties were to, we were designated certain areas to patrol. The point of that was to be seen and to deter and detect crime, enforce traffic laws, and respond to 911 calls of emergency.
Okay. Now, were you post-certified at that time?
I was.
Okay. Did that pretty much mean that you had arrest powers under the state of Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, did you have, at the time back in 2020, when you were with Glenn County PD, did you have any kind of medical training?
I had a previous CPR training and the use of a defibrillator, but I have never had any specialized medical training, nothing toward any type of critical injury.
Okay, so did you have essentially basic CPR training?
Yeah, basic CPR and the use of a defib.
Okay. Are you familiar with a neighborhood known as Satilla Shores?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is that neighborhood located?
It's located on the south end of Glenn County. It's in Brunswick, Georgia.
Okay. And was Satilla Shores a part of the zone that you patrolled back in 2020?
It was. We call our zones Bakers. That one was
Okay.
referred to Baker 9.
Baker 9. Okay. How long did you patrol Baker 9?
Back in 2014 for about a year. And then I patrolled several months of that, the 7 months that I was back, several months at that point.
Okay. And at the point where you're patrolling, are you patrolling with other officers during your shift, or is it pretty much just you?
Yes, ma'am, we're a one-man car.
One man in the car?
Mhm.
Okay. So during, say, the day shift, are you the only officer patrolling Baker 9?
Yes, we're a one-man car, and then usually it's one man per area, per Baker.
Per Baker. Okay. Are you familiar with another neighborhood called the Fancy Bluff area?
Yes, ma'am. Fancy Bluff is directly across the street from Satilla Shores. It's on the opposite side of the highway of Highway 17.
Highway 17. Okay. So Satilla Shores is on what side?
Satilla Shores is on the south side,
Okay.
and then directly across the street, headed toward the north direction, is Fancy Bluff.
Is Fancy Bluff. Approximately how many miles would you say separate Satilla Shores from the Fancy Bluff neighborhood?
Probably 2 to 3 miles.
Okay. So it's fairly close.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you familiar with another neighborhood known as Royal Oaks?
Yes, ma'am. It is in between Satilla Shores and Interstate 95. It's directly next door to it.
Okay. How far is Royal Oaks from Satilla Shores?
Just a few seconds if you're driving.
Okay. Are they on the same side of the street, same side of Highway 17?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Now, seeing as how you patrolled Baker 9 and you patrolled that area, how would you describe crime just generally in that area with Fancy Bluff, Satilla Shores, and Royal Oaks?
The area itself is probably one of the largest bakers that we have, and it's relatively low call volume. I myself didn't experience a whole lot of crime initially. Most of the time when I would go to any type of violent crime, it was surrounded by family violence.
Okay.
But it was far few in between. For the most part, it was a quiet, everyone known to it to be a quiet area, so just a low call volume.
Low call volume. Okay. Are the roadways in the Satilla Shores subdivision public roadways?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I want to turn your attention back to February 23rd, 2020. Did you respond to a call in that Satilla Shores subdivision?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And can you tell us what that call was in reference to?
I was dispatched to a 1037, which means a suspicious person.
Okay.
So I was described as a suspicious black male in the neighborhood wearing a white T-shirt.
Okay. And do you remember about what time you were dispatched? That
The call
came in?
came out at 1:08 p.m.
Okay. And where were you when you received that call?
I was fairly close. I used Highway 17 quite often to go from one side of the county to the other.
Okay.
And I got there at 1:13 p.m.
1:13 p.m. So it came out at 1:08, and you got there within minutes at 1:13.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you remember if a specific address was the subject of that dispatch?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it was 219 Satilla.
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 Okay. And as you're driving to that location, are you running lights and sirens? In other words, are your lights and sirens on or activated?
No, ma'am. I only use lights and sirens when I'm responding to an emergency call. This call was just came out as a suspicious person, so there wasn't any use of lights or sirens.
Okay. Now, when you get into the neighborhood, what do?
When I get into the neighborhood, I roll down my back windows. I usually roll down some windows, that way I can hear what's going on around me.
Okay.
And then I just proceed driving down Satilla Drive.
How fast would you say you were going?
I was going very slow. I was probably going less than 5 miles per hour.
Okay. And why is that?
That way we can observe, I can observe things a little bit better, and I can see things ahead of me.
Okay. Now, as you're driving down Satilla Drive, does anything catch your attention? Do you hear anything?
When I first came to the neighborhood, I didn't hear anything. As I go a little further down Satilla Drive, I hear 2 loud pop sounds.
Okay.
They were within a couple seconds apart.
Okay. And what did you think when you heard those loud pop sounds?
Well, it was pretty loud, so I knew it was, being the boom sound that it was either a firearm or fireworks. It would sound on one or the other.
Okay. So were fireworks common during that time, like at 1 something on a Sunday afternoon? Tell us about that.
Not specifically on that day or time, but throughout the county in general, it was not uncommon actually to hear fireworks. Any time of the day or night, periodically.
Okay. So at the point where you hear the loud bang, what do you do?
Just continue driving. I'm still patrolling, looking for anyone who's walking around the area. And I'm still on Satilla Drive, and I'm coming up on an intersection, which is Holmes Road and Satilla Drive.
Okay. And as you're coming up to that intersection, are you able to see anything?
Not yet. You're coming in, and it comes, if you're in my driver's seat, it starts to bear to the left. So it's a curve you got to make before I get to that intersection.
Okay. And if we can just pause there, I have something here. And this has already been admitted into evidence, states 47. Are you able to see that
Yes,
on
ma'am.
your screen? Okay. So, what are we looking at here?
You're looking at, this is the intersection of Satilla Drive and Holmes Road.
Okay.
And this is taken from the actual scene.
Okay. So, do we see on states 47 your path of travel to that intersection?
Yes, ma'am. If you look in the furthest distance, that lighter colored car that the sun is shining on.
Actually, let's do this, Mr. Minshew. Judge, do you mind if he steps down, if he projects his voice? Just a point on this?
To this picture?
Yes, if that's all right.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody can see.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you be careful stepping down. If you could just project so everybody can hear you. And do me a favor, don't touch the screen. Sure. Just point it.
And if you want to, you can use my mic and just kind of use this pen so we don't touch the screen.
You
Well,
can go.
right here on
Yeah,
the-
no, just, if you just, why is he coming down then?
I was just going to have him point
Oh,
like
on the
that.
document?
Right,
That's fine.
if that's all right.
Can everybody see if he stands there?
And just
No.
remember to project your voice. Thank you. Okay, so show us where you were coming from.
So this road here,
Mm-hmm.
I was way back, okay, it's the opposite. I was way back here. I'm
Okay.
coming in this direction.
And what road is that you're driving down?
That is still Satilla Drive.
Satilla Drive. Okay, so have you already passed the house in question, the 219, 220 Satilla? At that point?
Sit down.
Yeah, you can sit down.
I have not, I was around the area
Okay.
of those houses. I don't know exactly where I was,
Okay.
but I was in the area of those particular addresses.
Okay. So you said you were turning the corner, and was your view clear at the point when you're turning the corner, or was there something obstructing your
Yeah,
view?
even as I get further down that road, if you notice where I was pointing at, in the very center of the screen, yep,
Right here?
to your right there, there's a very tall, large head of bushes. So again, you still got to come around the curve. And then I can see the intersection, but to the left of it, which is where the scene is, I wasn't able to see that until I cleared those bushes.
So you cleared those bushes that we were just pointing to. Okay. So at the point where you cleared those bushes, what were you able to see?
Once I seen got past there, I looked over and I noticed there was 2 white males. One was waving their hand, flagging me down.
Okay. And how long did it take for you to encounter the scene from when you heard the shots?
Probably a minute.
About a minute or
45
so?
seconds, minute, yeah, it was approximately.
Okay. So you saw 2 white males and you said one was waving you down?
Yes, ma'am.
So what did you do after that?
I continued going forward. Did not know what the situation was at the time. I
Okay.
just seen someone flagging me down for calling me over.
Okay.
I continued driving until I got to that intersection, and then I parked my patrol car and got out of my car.
Did you see any other officers on scene, or were you the first officer on scene?
No, ma'am. I was the first officer there. Yes, ma'am.
So at the point where you get to the intersection, what do you do?
When I get out of the intersection, as I'm exiting my patrol car, I immediately hit my Axon body camera, which is located on the center of my chest. It takes a double tap to turn it on. I got out of my car and to see what was going on, and I seen two males there in front of me, and I observed a black male laying in the middle of the roadway, and there was he was covered in blood.
Okay. The two men who you encountered, what were they doing?
One was just kind of pacing in a small area, just walking. The other doing the same thing, just pacing, walking in a small area there.
Okay. Now, as the first officer on scene, what's your focus?
My first focus to any scene, including this one, is officer safety. So when I get to a scene, I scan the area to see if there's any immediate threats, and then scan the area for any victims that need emergency medical aid.
Okay.
In this case, once I observed the body laying there and covered in blood, I went ahead and communicated with dispatch and summoned the emergency medical personnel to the scene. And then my focus from that point is for scene security, scene integrity.
Okay.
My job is to make sure that the scene stays in its natural state that it was found and change as least amount as possible.
And why is that?
It's just important for when investigators get there that scene integrity keeps everything the way it was originally.
Okay.
That way, throughout their investigation, they can see how everything was, including evidence, and evict where people are positioned and laying at.
When you arrived on scene, did you see any vehicles?
Yes, ma'am. When I arrived on scene, directly in front of me, behind where the body was laying and the two men, there was a white F-150.
Okay.
And then right behind that one was a black Chevrolet Silverado truck.
Okay. And are those two vehicles commonly known as pickup trucks?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you mentioned the black male that was lying in the street. How did he appear?
He appeared to be, he was wearing a white t-shirt. He had khakis and white tennis shoes. He appeared to be unresponsive to his surroundings. He appeared to be deceased. He was covered in blood.
Okay.
The back of his shirt, the majority of the back of his shirt was covered in blood. And up underneath him, he had bled out to the point that the blood was exceeding the perimeter of his body. So he was laying face down on his stomach in the puddle of blood. Okay.
Did you hear any kind of sounds at all coming from the deceased male?
Yes, ma'am. I heard it's like an agonal breathing. I've always heard it being called a death rattle.
Okay. And is that a sound that you had heard before?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When?
I have responded to a suicide and to multiple vehicle fatalities where it's been at the people's last moment after death.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you heard it those times?
And I heard the same type sound, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, seeing that, did you attempt any CPR or anything like that on the deceased male?
I did not, no, ma'am.
Okay. Why not?
Well, when I got there, I did not know any of the people or any of the facts or circumstances to what had happened. The only thing I knew that I observed was a body laying in the middle of the roadway that had just bled out, and it was by apparent gunfire. So, being that I was the only officer on scene, without having any other police units to watch my back, there was no way that I could switch my attention to anything medical and still be able to watch my surroundings and watch after my own safety.
Okay.
And I also did not have the adequate medical training. My uniform and patrol car was not equipped either with any type of medical supplies or medical equipment that would have sufficed working on any gunshot or a critical injury.
What did you have in your vehicle? Did you have any kind of first aid kit?
Yes, ma'am. I had a small first aid pouch.
Okay.
It's probably approximately the average size of an open hand. And inside of that was things that were made for like minor cuts and things like that. It had like Band-Aids, ointment, and antiseptic wipes.
Okay. Now, the males who you saw on scene, do you see them in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So do you see a person by the name of William Bryan in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you need to stand, you can do that. Can you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be the gentleman here on the very end, blue overcoat, khaki pants, wearing glasses.
And Your Honor, I would like the record to reflect that he just identified Defendant Bryan. Now, do you see someone by the name of Greg McMichael, who you saw on scene?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be the fourth from the very end here. It's going to be a black tie, black overcoat, and glasses as well.
And Judge, if the record could reflect that he has identified Defendant Greg McMichael. Do you see Travis McMichael, who you also saw on the scene that day?
Yes, ma'am. Fourth over from this lady here. It's going to be he's going to have glasses on and a gray overcoat.
Okay. Judge, let the record reflect that he has just identified Travis McMichael. Thank you, Mr. Minshew. Now, when you're on scene, did you immediately see any weapons?
When I got on scene, I didn't see him right off the bat. Momentarily, though, I did see a shotgun laying over in a grassy yard.
Okay.
It was going to be pretty much directly behind where I originally saw Travis standing when I got there.
Okay. And was there anything notable about the shotgun when you saw it?
Yes, ma'am. It was. It had blood. It had a significant amount of blood on the shotgun as well.
Okay. During the time that you were on scene, did you see any other weapons?
Yes, ma'am. I after a good few minutes had already passed, I observed a silver revolver handgun in the passenger seat of the white F-150.
Okay. Passenger seat of the white F-150. Okay. Now, did other officers then arrive on scene there to assist you?
Yes, ma'am. Second unit, throughout the investigation, many showed up, but the second unit to arrive was Officer Duggan.
Okay. And did Officer Duggan render aid to the deceased male?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you put up any kind of crime scene tape or anything like that?
I did. That's part of the crime scene integrity, is to set up a perimeter around the border of what you think at that time is going to consist of all the evidence. It keeps people from walking inside of the perimeter.
Okay, thank you. And let the record reflect that I'm showing defense counsel States Exhibits 40 through 42 and also States Exhibit 131. Are we good? Okay. May I approach, Judge? All right, so I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibit 40, 41, 42, and 131. If you can look at those and tell me if you recognize them, and tell me how.
All right. State's Exhibit 131.
Yes, we can start there.
Yep. I recognize the, you can see the caution tape that I put up.
Okay.
And you can see there's the white.
Identify them and then we can describe them.
Sure. So, do you identify those pictures? Have you seen them before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that a yes?
Yes, ma'am, it is. I do identify the pictures.
All right. And do they fairly and accurately depict the scene as you saw it when you went out there at Holmes and Satilla on February 23rd, 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
Do they appear to have been altered or changed in any way?
No.
At this time, we tender states 40, 41, 42, and 131.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
Permission to publish, Judge?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So starting with Exhibit 40, Mr. Minshew, can you just let the jurors know what we're looking at in Exhibit 40?
Okay.
And before we get there,
Mhm.
is this a photo you took?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
A lot of times, well, I'll take an overshot. It's just an overview of the overall scene. I usually try to do that as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Just in case something gets moved or changed around. That way we can see the original state.
Okay. So here, did you take these photos as soon as you got on scene?
Yeah, probably within a minute and a half to 2 minutes.
Okay. So here, what are we looking at here in the center?
That right there is Mr. Ahmaud Arbrey's body.
Okay. And was this photo taken before it was moved by Officer Duggan?
It was before. I was still the only officer on scene.
Okay. Now, going to States 41, what are we looking at here in States 41?
All right, you see my patrol car there to the left.
Is this it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And Mr. Ahmaud Arbrey's body laying directly in the center of the roadway.
Okay. Right here.
Yes, ma'am. And
What
then,
do we see over here?
there's the white F-150 truck.
Okay. Are you able to recognize who this person is?
Had the lighter gray shirt on, looks like Gregory Michael.
Okay. And, here we go. Looking at States 42, what do we see here in States 42?
Mr. Ahmaud Arbrey's body laying in the center of the road.
Okay.
In the backdrop, we have the white F-150. Behind that is a black Chevrolet Silverado.
Okay.
It looks like there is Mr. Gregory McMichael there again. And then if you look down, go to your left, is there? There's going to be a shotgun.
Okay. So is this where the shotgun was when you
Yes,
first
ma'am.
got on scene? Okay. Looking at States 131, what are we looking at here?
Okay, that is, you're looking through the caution tape that I put up. Right past that is the white F-150.
Right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Then behind that one, you have the black Chevrolet Silverado.
Okay.
And then
And who do we see here at the Silverado?
that is,
This person.
that is William Bryan.
Okay. And who's this person standing near him?
Gregory McMichael.
Okay. And do you recognize this as a screenshot from your body cam video, Mr. Minshew?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at the point where this is happening on your body cam, is this before Mr. Bryan was interviewed by you?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is before Mr. McMichael, Greg McMichael, was interviewed by other officers, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay, so, you said you were wearing a body cam on that day, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you review that body cam footage before coming to court today?
Yes, I did.
Did you review it in its entirety?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
Okay. And does it fairly and accurately depict your time on the scene?
It does.
Was it altered or deleted in any way?
No, ma'am.
At this time, Judge, we would tender states 228.
From the defense.
Which is the body cam?
The body cam, his body cam video,
No
correct?
objection.
No objection.
No objection.
It's admitted. What was the number again?
228, Judge. And also, Mr. Minshew, I am showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibit 228A. Can you look at this, flip through it, tell me if you recognize it?
Yes, ma'am. Looks like a transcribed, transcription of my body camera.
Okay. And similarly, before coming to court today, did you look at that entire transcript? Did you review it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And does it seem to mirror your body cam video in terms
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
words that are spoken?
It does.
At this time, we tender states 228A.
For demonstrative purposes.
Yes, correct.
To aid the jury.
Correct.
Presume, no objection.
And to aid the witness.
No objection.
No objection.
One moment, Your Honor. And Judge, just for the record, we are tendering these just for this presentation. Of course, they won't be going back there with the jury. And defense counsel, they understand that.
So, speaking of the transcript.
Transcript, correct.
What were you doing with the transcript of it?
Well, because we're not playing the video, so the officer will use that to help him testify and quote what was said.
So as we sit here now, we understand the video is evidence. That's one thing. The transcript is going to be used to help guide the testimony as well as help the jury understand what's been said on the video. The transcript is the object.
Okay, it's in for demonstrative purposes. And the only reason I ask is I don't really give a charge if a transcript is being provided to the panel. I understand they're not being provided to a panel, for the panel. It's simply being used by the witness in order to aid in his testimony. I understand.
Just being clear for the record, the video itself, 228, is an evidence.
No. So I want to clarify, the agreement with defense counsel was that these are both being tendered in for the record only, and his body cam video is not being tendered into evidence to be played at any point in time at this time. It is strictly for the record because he's going to be testifying to the statements via the transcript to aid him in recalling the statements. So I don't want this to be misconstrued by the defense at all. This is strictly, these two items are for the record only.
Yeah, I understand how they are trying to have this officer testify about statements that were made and how there may be some limitations about those statements. The body cam is an evidence. I think it's now an evidence, so I'm not in agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask that you go ahead and take a step into the jury room and address some legal matters before the court.
All right, to the jury, please.
All right. Mr. Minshew, I'm going to ask that you go ahead and just take a step outside. You are under oath. Please do not discuss your testimony with anybody. All right, we may have just confused a very simple issue, but I just want to make sure I understand what's going on.
And I'm sorry, but Mr. McMichael took a
Okay, good.
break.
Just a moment.
That actually should stay up there.
So it's all here, all these, and I'm gonna put them over here, since they're in. Okay, so anything you want, yeah. You need 131?
131.
Yeah.
We got everybody back.
To clarify my position, which I think I was the one talking to the court at the time. The video, I'm sorry, and we had two lawyers for the state, so I thought Ms. Oliver was handling this. To clarify, Your Honor, the video I intend to play. We have discussed at length statements of co-defendants and how those are going to be presented through the state. So I understand that the transcript is going to be used for this witness to testify about what he was told by one of the defendants. I get that. What I'm saying to the court is the video is in evidence. There's going to be limitations, I understand, about what statements can be played from the video and whether they invoke brutal issues, confrontation issues, etc. I get all that. And we've worked hard to try to limit those issues by simply having witnesses testify to those statements. But I intend to play the video, the first part of it. I can do so without sound, but I intend to play the video because it shows what was going on in the scene when he first arrived. And there is a statement made by Greg McMichael to Travis that I think falls under a hearsay exception. And Travis makes an exclamatory, guttural cry out that I want the jury to hear, which I don't think involves any issues. So, to the extent that I'm saying to the court that video is in evidence, it's in evidence. I don't intend to violate what we talked about brutal.
Well, sounds like we're getting ahead of where we are.
It was admitted.
The state was limiting, yes.
So, no. Let me be very clear about what I heard from the parties. 228, body cam, tendered and admitted.
Correct.
Okay? That's it. 228A is the transcript that Minshew is going to testify, assist with his testimony so that we can work through some of the Bruton issues. Okay. That's what I understand the current status of the evidence to be.
Right.
How that body cam, if it is presented, gets presented, then is the next step in the process, which we're ahead of at this point.
I agree. And only raised it because Ms. Donakowski stood up and said, we're not using the body cam in a certain way, and I just wanted to make sure that we understood it's in evidence and I intend to use it. But I'm not going to go back and violate the Bruton discussions that we've had. And if I feel like there's a statement that needs to be presented and if there's an exception to it that doesn't invoke brutal, et cetera, then I would raise it to the court at that time, have an opportunity to be heard, and so now we're a little bit ahead of the game on that one.
I'm not entirely sure what we're arguing about from Mr. Bryan's perspective.
Well, hold on.
From what I just said, it sounds like we're not arguing about anything with regard to the presentation of the evidence right now.
Well, Your Honor, if I may, this morning before we started, I informed all defense counsel that I thought it was appropriate to tender the video for the record only, to tender the transcript for the record only, out of consideration for the witnesses who were taking the stand to testify, in this case for Officer Minshew, about what Mr. Bryan said, what Mr. Bryan did. And I explained very clearly that we were not going to play that, and it was not being offered as evidence. It was not going to go back with the jury, and I explained to them that what we were going to say is this is being tendered in strictly for the record. It's strictly to assist this witness to testify to these statements, and it's not going to go out with the jury. It's not going to be seen at all. And all of them were informed of this. So the state feels, having had an agreement from the defense, that all of a sudden we've tendered it into evidence with the purpose of making it part of the record, and with our intent clear that it was not going to be played. And now, of course, Mr. Sheffield is telling me, oh no, it's tendered into evidence, it's in evidence, I'm now going to get to play it. So the state, of course, feels a little hoodwinked, bamboozled, that I had an agreement with the defense attorneys as to what the nature of this was and our intent to just make it part of the record. Now, if that was an error on my part to be so transparent and forthright and to try and work with them, and I shouldn't have had this tendered in, and I should let them go ahead and tender the body cam in to then show portions, I understand. And I would understand the court's ruling at this juncture. If it's in and they want to play portions of it, then that's on us for having attempted to do the right thing, and we'll go down that path. I just wanted the court to understand that my understanding in doing this, and I explained it to them, was something completely different than what they're representing right now.
Your Honor, there was a... So he stood up first. So.
And I'm sympathetic to the state. Nobody wants to, in a case of this importance or magnitude, nobody wants to play gotcha games with the evidence. And certainly that's, from the Bryan defense, that's not our intention. My only concern, my only dog in this hunt is that depending on the testimony of this witness, we may or may not, subject to Bruton and all the other problems that we have, it's possible that there may be small excerpts in that statement that we may want to play. And we certainly aren't waiving the right to do that, but I didn't necessarily take the state as saying that the video is being played, the entire thing is subject to being played without any further inquiry. My primary concern here is I don't want any authentication issues if there's portions of the video that are otherwise appropriate to be played before the jury.
Well, so let me just point something out before we get started. If your co-counsel is going to make a offhanded comment about two lawyers arguing, and I get two lawyers arguing, I would suggest that we examine what shots we're going to throw back and forth, because I don't like those. I've explained on the record before that the professionalism in this courtroom is not just asked for, it is demanded. And so if we're going to do this, let's just be aware of what we're doing. I have not, at this point, lost my patience on this issue, but it's not the first time I have brought it up. If you're going to throw shots at the other side, I'm going to call you out on it. This is an example of it. Let's not do it, okay?
I haven't said a thing.
You have not, but what my point is, just a moment ago, your co-counsel called out the state for having two lawyers get up and start arguing a point. And it was not a comment that was meant to go in passing, all right? It was a direct comment, maybe in the moment. But again, let's make sure that we're fully aware of what we're doing before this court, because I am going to expect everybody to adhere to standards. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say is it was not my intention to bamboozle Ms. Donacasio. She was very transparent about what she intended to do. Mr. Sheffield wasn't even in the room when she told us what she intended. And it was my understanding that she was not playing the video because of the Bruton issues, it was too difficult to go back and forth and find these spots. Totally understood that. I don't think that prevents us from playing either the video without audio or a portion that, if it can be an exception to the hearsay rule.
I don't disagree. What I've got right now is the video's in, it's been admitted. I don't remember it being admitted in a limited fashion. It's in. Okay. The transcript's in for clearly the purpose of assisting the witness, so that's just in demonstratively. The video's there. I understand there's some Bruton issues with regard to what occurs within the video itself, and counsel have discussed that amongst themselves. I haven't gone through all of the transcripts to work through it because I assume that since counsel have done that and it has not come to me as having problems, that we've worked through the Bruton parts. I understand Mr. Sheffield wants to use part of it. If that doesn't violate Bruton or some other rule of evidence with the video being in, then so be it. But we haven't reached that yet.
I understand. I wasn't aware of the agreement, so we can do it however, if the court wants to allow the state.
Well, no, at this point, the video's already in. I mean, and it sounds like it'd become, if the defense wants to use it in the way that's been described, it's going to be coming in another way.
Right.
So I know the jury doesn't need to hear something being admitted twice for that purpose.
Okay.
But I understand where everybody is on it.
Yeah.
If I may be heard once more, and again, consistent with this theme of gotcha games, unless there's a statute or rule that prescribes it, Your Honor, why don't we just get this out of the way? And if two lawyers or 3 lawyers or 15 lawyers want to participate in the direct or cross-examination of a witness or addressing an issue that comes up, it's just going to be so much easier, given there's multiple sets of lawyers all around. Not to get into that.
I don't know. I had said early on in this case, each party is represented by counsel. My preference, unless there's a clear need for an exception, is 1 lawyer per issue. Otherwise, going through 3, 5, 7, hearing from 9 folks on every issue is a waste of time. If y'all can't coordinate that, let me know that you can't coordinate that, but I expect to hear from 1 lawyer per issue, per witness. Everybody understand? Okay. Now, if there's a real exception to that, let me know why exactly it is that you haven't been able to coordinate with your co-counsel. And I'm sorry, 10. I missed 1. My apologies. So from this point, with all this going on, in order to move this process along, I'm going to try very hard to adhere to that. I think we're back in the place we need to be, which is with a clear understanding of where the state is going with its witness. I do need, before I forget about it, maybe now is a good time to address it. What exactly is in the box with the shotgun?
So, Your Honor, what's in the box with the shotgun currently right now are test fires. We went back in and we looked at the test fires. It appears that the evidence will be that Brian Leopard got the box and removed the 3 or 4 unspent cartridge cases and the 1 spent cartridge case that was not ejected, and put them in extra bags for testing and analysis. So they are not what's in the box right now. The test fires are the items in the box. But of course, Ms. Ramos had put what she thought was in the box, but that's not currently what's in the gun box.
Okay. So that'll be cleaned up. I just want to make sure I understand what we have admitted into evidence then. That's going to be cleaned up through witnesses, I assume. It also satisfies the court that there's not live ammunition in the box with the shotgun.
There's not.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Stay ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor, we
All
are.
right. Let's go ahead and get the panel. Oh, I'm sorry, let's get the witness first and then the panel.
No, I would stand up.
Thank you, sir. If you could just please take the stand, I remind you you're under oath. All right, let's get the panel. All rise for the jury. Please be seated. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, your witness.
Thank you, Judge. So, Mr. Minshew, do you still have that transcript up there with you? Awesome. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about whether you spoke to any of the men that were out there on the scene on February 23rd, 2020. Did you speak with any one of them?
Yes, ma'am. I spoke with Mr. William Bryan.
Okay. And where was Mr. Bryan when you spoke with him?
He was standing nearby his black truck.
Okay. And in terms of the street, are we still talking about Holmes Road at that point?
Yes, ma'am. We're still standing at Holmes Road.
Okay. Now, at the point where you go up to speak with Mr. Bryan, was Mr. Bryan under arrest for anything?
No, ma'am.
Was he detained in any way?
No, ma'am.
Was he in any kind of custody as far as you were concerned?
No.
Okay. Did you force him to talk to you?
No, ma'am.
Did you threaten him in any way to talk to you?
No, ma'am.
Did you promise him anything of benefit to talk to you?
No.
Okay. Did Mr. Bryan voluntarily agree to speak with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he appear to be under the influence of any alcohol or drugs or anything like that?
Did not appear to be.
Okay. So did he appear to understand what you were telling him at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, where did Mr. Bryan say that he resided when all this happened?
Burford, 307 Burford.
307 Burford Road?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is that in the Satilla Shores subdivision?
It is. Satilla Drive turns into Burford.
Burford Road, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did he say whether his truck, his pickup truck that we saw in those photos, did he say where that truck was parked?
Yes, ma'am. It was in his driveway.
Okay. So let's talk about his actual statements to you in that transcript, okay? When you first approached Mr. Bryan, what did you ask him? And if you can turn to page 6, lines 13 through 14, and just quote that right there.
Sure. I said, all right, so you're a passerby coming through?
Okay.
And Mr. William Bryan,
what was his response?
his response was, not necessarily.
Okay. So you ask him if he's a passerby coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. And his response is not necessarily.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did Bryan then begin to tell you what happened to lead up to Ahmaud lying dead on the street on Holmes Road?
Yes.
Okay. Did Bryan tell you that he actually got involved in the chase that led to Ahmaud's death?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the beginning of that involvement. Okay. What was Bryan doing when he noticed something was going on? What did he say he was doing?
He said he was working on his porch.
Okay. And where was that? Was that on Burford?
Yes, ma'am, at 307 Burford.
Okay. And did he say something happened to catch his attention as he's working there on his front porch?
Yes, ma'am. He said he saw a black male run by.
Okay.
And then he saw a white truck drive by.
Okay. Now, when he saw the black guy run by, did he recognize that black guy?
He didn't say he recognized him, though.
He said he didn't recognize him, right? Now, when he first saw that truck drive by, did he recognize the people in the truck?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So he didn't recognize the black guy,
Correct.
and he didn't recognize the people in the truck.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Now, what did he do after seeing the black guy in the truck? And if you can turn to page 7, line 23 for me.
He said, he hollered at the truck, "Y'all got him?"
Okay, so he hollered,
I'm sorry, I misheard you, but they corrected me, it was my hearing, not yours.
okay, all right. So he said he hollered at the truck, "Y'all got him."
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So having no knowledge of what was going on, he asked the truck whether they had him.
That's correct.
Okay. Did he ever ask the black guy if he was okay?
No, ma'am, he did not say he did.
Did he ever ask the black guy if he needed help in any way?
No, ma'am, he didn't say he did that.
Okay. Did Brian then get into his truck and join the chase?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to page 8, lines 1 through 3, and just quote from where it said, "He pulled out." Lines 1
Okay.
through 3.
He said, "Pulled out of my driveway, was going to try to block him, but he was going all around it. I made a few moves at him, and he didn't stop."
Okay, thank you. Was that portion that you just read, when Mr. Bryan said he pulled out his driveway and tried to block Ahmaud, what road did that happen on?
That was on Burford.
Burford Road, okay. Did Brian say anything about Ahmaud having to stop during the chase at some point?
Yes, he said that he had to stop and catch his breath.
Okay. So Brian saw that Ahmaud had to stop and catch his breath.
Yeah,
While he
Brian's the one
was-
that told me that happened.
Okay. Now, did Brian point to the area where Burford Road kind of ends and comes up to the intersection of Holmes and Satilla when he said that Ahmaud had to stop and catch his breath?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Ahmaud had to stop and catch his breath at the end of Burford.
Objection, Your Honor. She is testifying and leading. This witness is not saying what Ahmaud did or thought. This witness is saying what Mr. Bryan told him.
And we'll be a little bit loose with this here. Let's get the narrative in if you need clarification, just to make sure, using this process, we know where everybody is.
Okay.
I'll allow you to do so, but let's get the narrative through.
Gotcha, Judge. So I'll try that again, okay? So where was Ahmaud when Brian said he had to stop, meaning Ahmaud, to catch his breath?
Where we were standing, he pointed back toward, we were on Holmes Road, he pointed back toward Burford.
Okay, so in that area of Burford. Now, according to Brian, did he say specifically that he blocked Ahmaud during this chase?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did he say specifically that he cornered Ahmaud during this chase?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How many times did Mr. Bryan say that he either blocked Ahmaud or cornered him during this chase?
I'm going to object to the form of the question. Is he asking how many times Mr. Bryan used the word, or how many separate times what he's describing took place?
I can re-ask the question, Judge. How many times did Mr. Bryan say that he blocked Ahmaud during this chase?
How many times he said it is irrelevant. How many times it happened is relevant.
Thank you, Your Honor. Go ahead, Mr. Minshew, you can answer the question.
After going back and reviewing the transcribed body camera, it appeared to be approximately 5 times.
Okay. So 5 times he said that he blocked Ahmaud.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How many of those times happened on Burford Road?
I believe it was 2 times on Burford,
Okay. And how many of those times happened on Holmes Road?
and those were 3 times.
3 times on Holmes.
Mhm.
Okay. And I know it's human nature to say mm-hmm and to nod,
ma'am.
but if
That's
you
fine.
can, thank you for the court reporter. Now, did Brian ever talk about whether he should have been chasing Ahmaud?
He did.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask you to turn to page 20, lines 23 through 24, and just tell us specifically what did Mr. Bryan say. in terms of,
Could you give me the lines again?
sure, lines 23 through 24, in terms of Mr. Bryan's involvement.
All right, and one more time for the page.
Page 20, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Might be going a little bit too fast.
23. He said, I mean, this would have never happened, you know. Should we? He said, I mean, this would have never happened, you know. Should I have been chasing him? I don't know.
Okay, so he said, should I have been chasing him? I don't know.
I
Is that
don't know.
right? Okay. Now, did Bryan, during the course of your interview, talk about his belief that Ahmaud was somehow trying to get into his truck?
He did.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you to turn to page 21, lines 2 through 4, and tell us what he said, starting with one time.
One time, when I cornered him up over here, he was trying to get in my truck. He tried to get in my door.
Okay, and at the point where you're talking to him on scene, is he pointing to a certain street where he's saying he cornered Ahmaud?
Yes, ma'am. He was pointing back toward Burford.
To Burford Road?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you then follow up by asking him to clarify what it looked like Ahmaud was doing?
I did.
Okay. And what was his immediate response? And I'm going to ask you to turn to page 21, lines 22 through 23.
I mean, I'd cut him off pretty good now.
Okay, thank you. Did Bryan talk about driving on the wrong side of the roadway when he was trying to block Ahmaud and corner him?
Yes.
Okay, did he say he drove on the wrong side of the roadway?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did he talk about wearing a seatbelt or not wearing a seatbelt as he's driving and chasing Ahmaud, trying to block him and corner him?
Yes, ma'am. If I remember correctly, he was not wearing a seatbelt.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to turn to page 23, lines 17 through 18, and just tell us what did Bryan say about feeling he would be thrown through the windshield? And if you can just start with thrown, lines 17 through 18.
He said, thrown through the damn windshield trying to chase this joker.
Okay. So did he tell you he felt like he was going to be thrown through the windshield without his seatbelt trying to chase this damn joker?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Joker being the victim in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Bryan talk to you about his involvement in the moments immediately before Ahmaud was gunned down?
Say it one more time.
Sure. During your interview with him, did he talk about his involvement leading up to the victim being gunned down at the intersection of Holmes and Satilla?
Did he tell me that while we were talking?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And if you could turn to page 33. Lines 3 through 10. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
And if you can just read where it starts from the black guy, and
Okay.
just read it, slowly.
He said, the black guy, like I say, went on up towards the damn fire truck. But I think I somehow or another changed his mind, and he cut back through this way. I think I blocked him again or something over there.
Okay, go ahead.
And he came back through this way, so I went back up in here and went that way. And that's about where your video picks up when I turn around.
Okay. And at the point where Bryan's talking about the last blocking incident that you just read, what road is he on, and what road is the victim on?
We're on Holmes. We're on Holmes Road at that point.
Holmes Road, where he died.
Correct.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So did Bryan also talk about Ahmaud seeing him on Holmes Road and then turning around back down Holmes Road towards the intersection where he was shot.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to direct you to page 10, line 11. Tell me when you're there. Starting with he.
He said he turns around and comes, sees me, and he turns back around and starts hauling ass that way.
Okay. And that would be from your interview with him, hauling ass back towards the intersection where he was
Back
killed?
towards Holmes Road and Satilla Drive.
Okay. Did Brian talk about seeing Ahmaud looking tired? Like he was tired of running at some
Yeah, he
point?
mentioned that he was.
No, the previous question was stopping to catch his breath, Judge. This is a different question.
He did mention that.
Okay, so, go ahead.
Sorry.
Thank you. Now you can answer.
Yes, ma'am, he did mention that.
He didn't mention that, okay. Let's see where we're at with that one. Okay, so go to page 34. And tell me when you're there.
There.
Okay. Okay, going down to line 17, starting with when. Not the second when.
Okay.
Okay, so when I rounded.
Okay, he said, when I rounded the corner out there, it was almost like the black guy was tired of running.
Okay, thank you. Did he say that during this time he overheard anything being yelled towards the black guy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're going to go to page 36, lines 17 through 18, and tell me when you're there.
I'm there.
Okay. Starting with stop. Can you just go ahead and
Yes.
and tell us that?
He said he heard, stop, what'd you do? Or something like that. What'd you steal? What'd you do?
Okay. And that's during the time that he's being chased, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, according to Brian, did Ahmaud ever say anything during the chase that Brian could hear?
He said he never said a word.
Never said a word. Okay. And did he say how close he got to Ahmaud during the chase when Mr. Brian was chasing him?
He said he had his window down, and at some point he got right up close next to him.
Okay. And he didn't hear him say a thing?
That's correct. He did not.
Now, did Brian have a cell phone on him during this time when he's chasing
Yes,
Ahmaud?
ma'am.
Okay. Did he ever tell you that he called 911 or anything?
No, he did not tell me. He never mentioned it.
Okay. Did Brian ever see Ahmaud with any kind of weapon?
He never told me he saw him with a weapon.
Okay. You specifically asked him about a weapon and whether he saw one.
I don't recall.
Okay, but Brian never told you he saw a weapon.
That's
on
correct.
him.
He never told me he saw a weapon.
Okay. Did Brian ever say Ahmaud made any verbal threats towards him during this time when he was being chased?
No, ma'am. He said he didn't hear him ever say anything.
Okay. Any verbal threats towards anybody at all?
No, ma'am.
Did Brian ever say he saw Ahmaud commit any crime at the point where Brian decided to leave his house?
No, ma'am. He did not report any crime to me.
Okay. Did Brian ever say he was trying to make a citizen's arrest of Ahmaud?
No, ma'am.
Did Brian ever say he was trying to arrest Ahmaud for criminal trespass?
No, ma'am.
Loitering?
No, ma'am.
Burglary?
Didn't mention it. No,
Attempted burglary?
no ma'am.
Aggravated assault?
No.
Anything?
No, ma'am.
And did Brian ever say that he told Ahmaud that Ahmaud was under arrest for anything?
No, ma'am.
So after you talk to him and you get his statements, is there a point where you discover there was a video of this incident?
Yes, ma'am. He told me that he witnessed everything and that he had it recorded on his cell phone.
Okay. And did you see that video?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Where were you when you watched it?
I was sitting in the passenger side of his truck. It was during the day. He said he had it on his phone, so just so there wouldn't be glare. He sat in the driver's side, and I went to the passenger side, and he played it there.
Okay. And did you watch the video in its entirety?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you recognize the scene from the video as the scene that you were looking at?
Yes, ma'am. They were both the same.
Okay. And did you recognize the people depicted in the video as the same people on scene with you that day?
Yes, ma'am. The same vehicles and same people were in the video.
Okay. At some point, did you try to email the video to yourself?
Yes, ma'am. Tried to email it. Did that so that it could be right away at Glenn County's on a file. That way we had it just in case. Same thing as taking pictures right when we get there. It wouldn't send, so I tried to make a shorter version, leaving the original on, but make a shorter version just to, again, send it through Glenn County Police Department's email. Couldn't get any of them to send.
Okay.
And then that's when another officer who was familiar with criminal investigations said that they could pull it off right there.
Okay. So you tried to crop it. Were you able to crop a shorter video?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But the original longer one was still there, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. But you weren't able to send either of them?
That's correct.
Okay. Have you reviewed the video before coming into court today?
Yes, I've looked at it again.
Okay. And is it fair and accurate in terms of the video that you saw on the 23rd of February 2020?
Yes, ma'am. Same video.
Okay. Other than your cropped portion, in terms of the original video, were there any alterations or anything like that?
No, ma'am. They look the same.
Okay. At this point, Your Honor, we would tender states 190.
Objection.
No objection.
No objection.
Submitted.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Minshew, did Brian ever say that he saw Ahmaud throwing anything anywhere, like from out of his pockets or anything during the chase?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Permission to publish, Judge?
Go ahead. Just so I'm clear, what you're posting, this is 190.
Yes, 190. If I may have one moment, Your Honor. Mr. Minshew, do you hear Mr. Bryan say anything right there in that clip?
I can hear him say something, but I can't make out what it is.
You can't make out what it is?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor. But the defense might have some questions for you, okay?
Yeah. Mr. Sheffield. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're at a good time to break for lunch. Why don't we go ahead and recess until 1:15. That gives everybody an hour to get some lunch and be ready to go at 1:15. Again, all the instructions the court has given you to this point still apply. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. All right, have a good lunch.
All right, for the jurors. So, hold on. So, as y'all see, there's been a lot of inconsistency so far. There's been a lot of inconsistency so far. It's crazy.
Okay, y'all be seated.
Huh?
All right, Mr. Minshew, during the lunch recess. And please be back just before 1:15. Thank you.